Hello and welcome to this quick guide on using cameras in Crayta. You can add a camera to your game world by navigating to the Primitives tab of the library, selecting Camera and clicking anywhere in your game world. This will add an invisible camera to your game, which you can take control over by using a simple line of code in a script in Crayta. Once you've added a camera to your game world, you can position that camera as normal with any entity by using the location handles and the rotation handles. But the cool thing with cameras is you can also position the drone in the view that you would like a camera to look at. With the camera selected, scroll down in the entity editor and select Move to Drone, and the camera will move to whatever position your drone was just in, looking in the exact direction that it was looking at. So this is a really handy way of setting up cameras around your game world and knowing before you run the game exactly what they're going to be seeing. Now, to take control of the camera, for example, this camera over here, you might need to do a little bit of scripting, as I've already mentioned. So attached to this camera, I have added a camera swap script, and it uses this key function here, which is the player get user set camera function. And I'm calling this when a player interacts with something in my game, world. So when the player interacts with this computer, it calls the camera1 camera swap script activate camera function, and essentially sets that camera as the new camera. And we can see this in action if I press F5 to test, run over to the computer and interact with it. We can see that now I'm looking at the game world through that camera that I positioned in the top corner there. To return control and return the camera back to my player, I need to attach a script to my user, which essentially sets the camera back to the player at some point. This is because you can't do simple interact methods like that. They're much more complicated when you can't see exactly what your player is looking at. So the best thing to do is to use the on button pressed API hook, and essentially whenever the user presses a button, if they press a specific button that you want to determine is the one which exits an external camera and returns the camera back to the player, check for that button and then run the set camera function, this time passing in the player. So they're kind of the opposites. You can set camera to a camera that you position in the game world, and then to return it back to the player, set the camera to the player. This also gives you the opportunity to do ride-along cameras in spectate mode, so you can set the player to one of the other players in the game. And there might be some opportunities for new game mechanics by setting the camera to different players and different cameras around the game world. The world's really your oyster with that camera stuff. A good idea in addition to that is to add some UI and also maybe lock the player input so that they can't run around when they're interacting with a computer, just to make it really, really clear that they are no longer following their player, but they're actually in a completely separate camera. So I've added a bit of a camera HUD and I've locked my player input like that. And now if I press interact, it returns my control back to my player, changes back to the player HUD and changes the camera back to the ride-along camera for my player. And that's essentially the crux of using different cameras in Crayta, and I really look forward to seeing how you use it.